Welcome back, everyone, to For The Hayters. Today, we're having a much-needed conversation around queer parenthood, the challenges of fertility treatment, and the importance of representation in the TTC, trying to conceive, space. Our guest, Morgan, is a queer mom and TTC support coach who provides one-on-one guidance and self-care tools for queer folks navigating their path to parenthood. After going through 14 unsuccessful IUIs, and experiencing firsthand how the fertility system isn't built with queer families in mind, Morgan is now using that experience to help others feel seen, supported, and empowered. Today, we're talking about the emotional toll of TTC, the gaps in the healthcare system, and why now, more than ever, it's so important to celebrate and uplift queer families. Let's get into it. Morgan, thank you so much for being here.
You're welcome.
If you could just start out by sharing a little bit about yourself and what that journey to parenthood looked like.
Yeah, so my name is Morgan, aka Mamo, and I am native to the Pacific Northwest. And yeah, I really kind of just combined my professional background as an event coordinator, placemaker, community builder, like curator of delight and surprise. So like that's my background professionally, and I actually have an events business as well. With my own lived experience of, like you said, trying to conceive unsuccessfully 14 times in my
Mm-hmm.
late 30s, now on what I refer to as my perimenopause and preschool era, very much in that phase.
Mm-hmm.
And then like uniquely being on that path of trying to conceive and then stopping and then pivoting and then my wife switching to trying to conceive. So 16 total IUIs between the two of us. And so pivoting to being the non-gestational parent and then navigating second parent adoption. So like it's a really kind of like my path is a real mixed bag. Um, but so yeah, that just sort of brought me to the space of like, how can I provide other queer folks, other queer couples the support, resources, and tools and actual like bolstering and support that we didn't have?
Mm-hmm.
And how can I support folks coming up behind me who are looking for the same things I was looking for and couldn't find?
Do you feel like sometime, and this conversation is interesting for me because obviously it is very relative to my life.
Right.
I understand every single word that you are saying. I understand the need for every single word that you're saying because I'm in it. I'm in the thick of it. I just went
Hmm.
through all those frustrations. My first question that I didn't know I was going to ask, I'm curious what your sign is.
I'm a Capricorn.
Okay.
Yeah.
I like just the type, like the structure of like events and structure of life. I was like, oh,
Oh
I
yeah.
wonder what she is.
Yeah.
Um,
People call me the Morganizer. I'm just like organizing, like bringing a vision to life. Like I love that's like lights me up as a person. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd love to kind of, start from the beginning if possible of just speaking through those 14 unsuccessful IUIs, what that
Yeah.
experience was like, both physically and emotionally.
Hmm.
And more importantly, I think it's important to also throw in there the education behind why IUIs first and like why going through that.
Yeah.
Just because I know the inside to that, but it's really good for other people to know that as well.
Yeah. So to answer the question of the IUIs first, the reason why we started with IUIs is because it just didn't feel like jumping from like not knowing what to do and jumping directly to IVF seemed like completely daunting.
Hmm.
So we just kind of started with what's the route with the least amount of initial barriers that we can tell initially. So we were starting way back, like, do we know anybody who could give sperm to us? Like, do we know anybody? Do we have a friend of a friend? Is there anyone we can think of? Just really homegrown, doing it homegrown. And so the thing is that whole first part of the process was just this massive amount of piecemealing everything together because we were like, what is an IUI? Who administers an IUI? Who in our town administers an IUI? What does that look like? How does that feel? Like, what do we need
Hmm.
to do? How much does it cost? Right. So we're asking ourselves all of these questions and literally only relying on the information we're getting from like maybe the two lesbian couples on YouTube who happen to have gone through this process themselves
Mhm.
already. So we're really
Mhm.
basing it off of what they're saying because we have nothing to compare it to. So we just like basically just a lot of like late night doom scrolling Google, to be honest with you, in terms of like, how does this actually work? How do we actually get pregnant like this?
Mhm.
And so we just, with my events background of being saturated in the community, I just happen to know a lot of folks who kind of started like asking around of like, who are even adjacent to the fertility world where we live. And we had a friend who was seeing a registered nurse who was sort of helping her track her menstrual cycle and stuff like that, and happened to also administer IUIs. So bingo bango. So we went and saw her and just kind of like chatted about what the process was and how it all works. And her biggest thing was that if you're going to do natural IUIs, which means you're not doing a trigger shot, you're not taking Clomid, you're not doing anything medicated, you're just really depending on your own tracking of your own ovulation using, a million LH strips and like your own basal body temperature every single morning. That's kind of what she was teaching people to do, but like that's the method she was going to use to do an IUI, which resulted in the reality of I had to track my ovulation, my period for 6 months before she even would administer an IUI.
Hmm.
So I literally still have the sheet. They're all like taped together because it was like manually writing out every morning. I wake up, my eyes open, and my wife's there with a thermometer in my mouth. So you're really depending on your own body temperature, your cervical mucus, your cervical positioning. You're really just like getting to know. I mean, I looked my own cervix straight in the eye for the first time at 37. It's a real experience. Um, which is like something everyone should do, by the way, is have an understanding of what their body's doing. But so yeah, so we started there, just like manually tracking for that long. And then we thought, okay, well, she'll come to our house. We'll have the tank shipped to us, which I don't recommend. We actually picked it up from the Seattle Sperm Bank on the way to Portland Pride that year, and we like buckled it in the back seat and everything. And it just kind of stared at us at the Airbnb in the box, like a lot of pressure. Um, and
Yeah, like
you
how,
know,
like making sure that the temperature is staying good. Like, is it,
Yeah, because it only lasts for a couple days. It expires. It just has dry ice. It's like
for
it
sure.
expires. And
Yeah.
so, I've been ovulating since I was 11 and I was 37 then. And I don't think I was ever super regular my whole life. And on that cycle, I ovulated late. And we had to drive that puppy back down to Seattle and put it back and wait for the next cycle. And so we did that, and then the reserve came to our house. And my wife and I both are massage therapists in our past life, so I still have my massage table. We put it out, cute at home, kind of like thing, cozy at home. And the thing is, the reason why there were so many is because the first 6 cycles, or and there was breaks in between, but the first 6 cycles we did 2 IUIs per cycle to offset the fact we weren't doing medicated rounds. So that's why there's
Hmm.
so many actual IUIs. But this was also, in total, was over 2.5 years with breaks in between. But that's why there's so many, because then I did 6 natural and 2 medicated
Did
rounds
you
of
have the
IUIs.
same donor sperm for all of them?
Well, ultimately, so no, yes and no. No, because we started with one, and then I found out through doing some other hormonal panels that I am CMV positive, which
Hmm.
most people don't even realize they are. Apparently, my mom was, come to find out. And so you really shouldn't, it's not recommended that you use a donor that's also positive if you're positive, so that in the event
Hmm.
you get sick while you're pregnant. So then we picked a second option. He and I again had matching some stuff that was also positive for, that wouldn't be ideal in terms of developmental stuff later on with your kid potentially. And
Hmm.
then the third one we picked was the one that we ultimately used for my last 2 rounds and both of my wife's IUIs.
And just
So
for educational purposes, if you don't mind sharing, I mean, you're buying sperm, and it's not cheap to buy
no,
vials of sperm.
no.
So each
Mm-mm.
time you're spending, I would assume thousands of dollars.
Yeah. So when we started the vials for zero point 0.5 milliliters, I mean, I still have one of the vials. They're like that big, teeny,
Hmm.
0.5 milliliters. I mean, it has millions and millions of sperm in it, but not all of them are motile or mobile, Um,
Yeah.
it was 680 per vial at the
Okay.
Seattle Sperm Bank. Now they're almost $1,200 per vial, and it's the exact same thing. So we decided that we ultimately weren't going to have a second, so we put the two we had in sibling storage back. We only
Hmm.
got a percentage of what we paid initially, not what they're worth right now. And they're just going to literally move it from one spot to the next and sell it to someone else for $1,200. The same exact thing. I didn't even leave the
Yeah.
building. It's just been in their stores this whole time that we've also been paying for the storage for. Um, so yeah, so it was just like a long process of
Was
over and
there
over and over
was there
again trying to
never
get the,
like a time where you thought to switch gears of, going into IVF, or was the hope to always just find success in IUI?
the hope was that, I mean, that we never saw any reason that I wasn't, there's anything
Able
wrong
to
with my actual
conceive.
fertility and able to
Hmm.
conceive. So I think that it still just felt like it made the most sense for us. But like after the fifth or sixth round of me doing double IUIs, we did an HSG, which is like a test to see if there's any block in your fallopian tubes. There wasn't.
Hmm.
And then we went to the only fertility clinic in our town when he did the two medicated rounds. Didn't work. Then the only other option was us for us to now go to Seattle, which is 90 minutes south of us. And at that point, after I'd done all 14 of them, we did a bunch of tests and found that my AMH was so low that I shouldn't have ever started the process in the first place. And that was the first time anyone said those three letters to me. So at that point.
What is AMH?
AMH is like a test that tell you what your ovarian reserve is. So basically,
Okay.
we are all like folks that have a uterus are born like we all have all the eggs we're ever going to have when we're in utero, right? So
Hmm.
you're basically like I call it like a gumball machine. So basically, once those gumballs are gone, that's it. Like, right? There's like not a lot you can do about that. And so my test was so low that I remember October 2020, that fertility doctor telling me like, Morgan, we could do IVF and I could hit you with a ton of hormones now, but you're gonna hate your life. And to be just brutally honest with you, and I don't think it's gonna be fruitful. So basically the end of your road is here
Hmm.
after doing all that. And so in our household, there happens to be two people that both have uterus that both want to get pregnant. And so we just switched gears the following February to my wife. She happened to ovulate twice in February and got pregnant on the second one. Has eggs for days, so there's no no problem there apparently. Um, and she got pregnant on the second one. We had our daughter in November 2021.
Wow.
Yeah.
In that journey, was there any key moments, that you found yourself like, what were those biggest challenges that specifically as a queer person navigating the fertility system? Is there anything that kind of sticks out?
Oh, for sure, definitely. There's several things that still stick out to me even now, or that I like just will never forget. One of those things was we were trying to avoid that fertility doctor like the plague at the time because we knew he had a pretty bad reputation for being really heteronormative. Like he explained to us how the whole process works, like on a legal pad with a pencil. And when I called to make the appointment for our consultation, his receptionist said to me, "Oh yeah, we work with people like you." And I'm like, "Well, I hope so. This is the business of getting people pregnant." Like, what the fuck? So like, I just remember like in general feeling that like an immense sense of being othered in that moment. And I felt
Mhm.
definitely, not with all of the providers we worked for, specifically with the actual fertility clinic we worked with here in Bellingham, that, there's really this sense of like, we're not really sure what else to do with you. We're going to just treat you like you're infertile. And the reality is that I'm not infertile. My wife's not infertile. We just don't have sperm that lives in our household. Like that's really the only difference. And
Mhm.
so just this real sense of like, this is like way harder for us than it needs to be simply because we're queer. Like
Mhm.
like point blank period, growing a family is just by default harder for queer folks than it is for cis het folks. Period. It just
Mhm.
is. And for us, like no one's getting like, knocked off, a night of fireball and bad decisions. We put every single ounce of ourselves into this process, literal blood, sweat, and tears, and a
Mhm.
shit ton of money, and all of our hopes and dreams for a long period of time. when we're like essentially experiencing like the grief, it's grief over and over and over again because you put every ounce of yourself into each cycle, and then to not be pregnant again and to feel other and feel not seen or heard, and you know what I mean, all the things over and over again, that impounds on your system.
Mm-hmm.
And so the impact of those things combined is immense. And
Yeah, absolutely.
it's still something that we deal with even now. Like people ask me, like, who's the mom? Where's the dad? What does the dad do? You know, like,
Yeah.
you know what I mean?
Yeah, I
So
had my
yeah.
first who's the dad experience already,
Hmm.
and do you just let it slide or do you correct them? And I've been working on my thoughts and feelings towards it, and the correction is just needed. So, always just saying, the donor is correcting them in like the language that they use. But
Right.
I it was like a month in, and I already had the who's the who's the dad question. What
Right.
what do you think, as you've experienced all of this, what are some of the things that you wish that not just people, but like professionals understood about working with queer families?
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think that on like a bigger level, I think there's a lot of room for improvement in terms of like people just understanding what the queer experience is like in general. And I think just during the TTC phase in particular, just understanding like the ins and outs of like how difficult that process is and what the barriers are. I think that like the biggest thing that we experience and that I've heard from clients and friends who are queer and gotten pregnant is like the biggest thing is the unknowns of what to expect, not just like the
Hmm.
nuts and bolts of getting pregnant, but how we're going to be treated. And then also, and then am I going to be seen, heard, like understood? Is my doctor going to like actually use my actual pronouns? Are we going to feel other the whole way? Like, is the non-bio parent going to feel weird the whole time? Like, all of those what ifs, all of those like
Hmm.
things that we as queer people already kind of walk around with in life in general, in terms of like a hypervigilance or a wall of like not trusting. So I think that like I wish that and the folks that we worked with in particular were like pretty neutral like compared to what other folks deal with depending on where you live or who you are. But just like yeah, doing the education to like know how to use inclusive language, but also like in a like even more so like how to be an actual true ally to folks, understanding that like not just that we deserve to be parents like anyone else, but like really fully understanding like the things that we face, like I said, by default, that straight folks
Hmm.
don't face. Um, so I think that there's a lot of room for improvement there, and the level of stress, again, by default, that we have to deal with because of the lack of that education and like and providers' unwillingness to actually understand or do any of the work too. And
Hmm.
in reality, and like not just on a personal level, but like on an actual level in terms of like the safety and like support of your actual pregnancy, like just they're putting undue amount of stress on not only the family but on like the actual birthing person by applying all this unnecessary pressure and stress. So I think there's like a lot of room that can for improvement there.
Yeah, and that, I mean, stress is such an important factor to someone's ability to
Hmm.
also conceive, and it's
Hmm.
important for people to feel safe and seen and heard,
Yeah.
um, throughout that entire process
Yeah.
of it all. Did go over in detail just that experience that you went through, and I'm just curious if you remember any type of scenarios or points in your trying to conceive journey for yourself, how you were able just to continue, right? Like, how did you emotionally feel throughout those years? How do you emotionally
Hmm.
feel now still about it, right? Like is it something that you still think about, or is it, something that's just a part of you in the past?
No, I mean, it's always going to be a part of me, and I fully 1000% still remember very specific moments of like, you know, after that, like the 2 week wait, which is that period of time after you've done an insemination, whether you find out you're pregnant or you start menstruating again, is like this can be this really brutal time. And
Mhm.
um, so I remember very strongly a lot of those 2 week waits, and I remember like temping every morning still and just like when I know we're getting to the end of that 2 week wait, and I'm checking my temperature still, and I'm watching and waiting and anticipating one thing or the other. And you're watching like the point two differences in your temperature. You're like watching and waiting for any teeny tiny sign you possibly can to indicate that you're pregnant. And then the weird part of that is that like there's an immense amount of grief that happens to know you're not pregnant. There's
Mm-hmm.
also this weird amount of relief that happens at the same time because you're not waiting anymore to know either way. So like this weird combination of things happens at the same time. And I remember those moments so vividly of like just that particular point in time and then doing that over and over again. And I think that the way that I was able to keep going in that is just like my own will, some degree of like, we want this. This is what we're supposed to be doing. We want to get pregnant. So we're just going to keep doing them until that happens.
Mm-hmm.
And in reality, that moment of finding out that the end of my road had come, in some ways, again, a total crushing blow. I think I blacked out, honestly. I think I went into shock, honestly. Took the longest walk of our life after that and just like was, I think, literally in shock and just like emotional about the fact that all of that time and energy, I don't want to say it was a waste, but it certainly was obviously a lot for a long period of time. And then to say, like, you're never going to get pregnant, Morgan, like, that's never going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then to switch gears, like, it was the same kind of thing. It was like, you can't be serious, like, after all of that. And oh my God, I'm so glad I have this information now because otherwise I would have just kept going
Mm-hmm.
because I wouldn't have known this. And
Yeah.
that could have been the case because ultimately I could have never met that doctor and I could have never gotten that information and I would have just kept going and we would
And
have
just
spent even more
in that
money.
same cycle. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, exactly. And so it's like a weird combination of things, getting that information and the devastation of my time being done. Like, yeah, it's immense. So, and I still remember that moment. I remember exactly where we were sitting. I remember what the light was doing in our living room. Like, I remember everything of that moment, having that
Yeah.
conversation.
And
Yeah.
and throughout this all, how what does that support look like from your partner? And what does that emotional toll feel like, or that you're aware of on them?
We did that, our whole process was very much the two of us combined. It was very much, even though
Mm-hmm.
at the time I was trying to conceive, it was very much our journey, it was our process. We did everything, every ounce of it together. And then kind of switching gears to when she became, the one who's trying to conceive and getting pregnant, then I kind of assumed a role of different type of support system. But the thing is too is that her TTC journey was a month long in terms of
Mm-hmm.
actually trying to get pregnant, whereas mine was much longer. So I think we weren't in that phase for very long while she was trying to conceive. So I think that made a difference in terms of like my level of support or like what our dynamic felt like after that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and now like being like the non-bio parent, like that's come with its own set of like grief again, like in terms of like going through the second parent adoption process and like dealing with a lawyer and a social worker who comes and assesses me at my house and paying them more
Mm-hmm.
money and sitting in front of a judge, like all those things. So it's just like from start to finish, like it's not like again, it's not like you get just knocked up one night. It's like years of proving yourself worthy
Mm-hmm.
to somebody so that you can become a parent. And I think that's messed up, like on the
Yeah.
1,000% level. Like yeah, I've never felt like I've had to justify myself as a person more in my entire life than since trying to and becoming a mom. Period.
Yeah, I mean, our paths are definitely different, but I couldn't relate to that sentiment more. Just the testing, the questioning, like everything that we had, like we went through IVF, but just that journey alone. Did you know about the second parent adoption prior to like conceiving? How were you informed about that?
I didn't. When we started, I had no idea that it was even a thing. And I think
Hmm.
at the time I was managing our farmers market, and my ED had gone to is queer, and has two kids that who's the second parent too, and went through that process. And so, luckily, in my case, like I had a boss who was queer, who knew a lawyer who was queer, and like could give me some insight about what she went through in the process. But there was all even differences though about like what I went through in Bellingham, Washington, to what she went through in Seattle, Washington. like not that far from each other, and like totally different sets of things you would have to go through, like
Hmm.
getting your pediatrician's like a note from your pediatrician, like having like a background check around like your financial history and your health history is sometimes the case. For me, I had to do a background check. I had to get references from friends who could like vouch the fact that I'm a good person and I deserve to be a mom, like literally. And then I
Hmm.
had a social worker come to my house and assess me for like over an hour. Luckily, she's a straight, but an ally, an adoptive parent, and thought it was crazy that I'd have to do this too. Um, so luckily, I had that going for me. But one of the reasons we waited so long to even do it in the first place is because, again, we didn't know what that social worker was going to be like. And in all reality, like her home assessment was a big part of what pushes that through. And
Hmm.
so like she could have been totally biased and doesn't like queer folks and doesn't want me to be a, like recognized in that way, and could have skewed the whole thing.
Yeah.
But having a background check, and the thing is, she kept saying, Morgan, you're legal. You're already legal, because in Washington State, I'm seen as the parent. We were married when we had her, and I'm on her birth certificate, which I'm on there as a father. It's not even other
Hmm.
parent. I'm on there as a father. And really, the birth certificate's not even a legally binding document. It's like a souvenir. So they're like, you're already legal. You don't have to do this. But even that language of like telling me I'm legal because otherwise I'd be illegal somehow is so
Hmm.
whack to me. It's like so bananas to me to even hear them say that. Even the judge was saying that to me. Like they felt, for them, it's like a moot point. I'm just a case number. Um, but in my mind, that didn't feel like enough safety, enough coverage for me in the event that, I was with Arlo somewhere. We got in a car accident. She broke her leg at the zoo or whatever. My wife's not with me. Like, would I have access to her at a hospital? And I'm
Hmm.
not going to chance not having that access. Like, even if there's like 3% chance that
Hmm.
that would be the case, I'm not going to chance that. So now we like go everywhere with like adoption paperwork in the glove box. You know what I mean? It's crazy.
I didn't even think about that, like traveling with the right paperwork too, and just having it on hand. Like if
Yeah.
ever the situation, because currently the topic of conversation in our house is the second parent adoption, and everything that comes, and it's just crazy to hear the differences by state, what people have to go through. And but in
Hmm.
New Jersey, thankful, like we can bypass all of the home inspections, interviews. We don't have to go to court. It's really just paperwork, which is a privilege. Like, because I just happen to live in New Jersey. That just happens to be a state that doesn't require all of this. But
Yeah.
I'm pretty active about this on social media, and I was talking to someone, and a judge denied their second parent adoption, like just because he wanted to. Like there was no
Mhm.
other reason or no other validity behind it other than he just didn't see it as a family situation. And that's the
Yeah.
reality that people are facing in certain states,
Yeah.
which is infuriating. It's
Right.
it's it's expensive, it's frustrating, there's lack of education behind it, like, you know and I have to adopt my biological child in this case because
Mm.
Leah is
Yeah.
carrying. um so I can understand and just relate to the frustration around that
Yeah.
experience of everything, because it's just so top of mind right now,
Hmm.
for me in this,
Yeah.
just in the situation that we're kind of in right now. Speaking about you posting online and then just being inside this community, what do you feel like, what role do you think community support, especially, being a queer person, has played for you in this journey in general?
I mean, I think that like in terms of like my own support in early days, like it certainly was like comforting just to like have any insight at all from anyone
Hmm.
who knew what this was like. And I think that like what I'm hearing now, like from like clients and again like other folks in my community are like they just want to like be able to talk to somebody who understands what this is like. You know what
Hmm.
I mean? Like I had a couple reach out to me from Finland around the holidays, because even there they're like, we're so burnt out. We're like so exhausted. We're like 8 cycles and we don't know what to do next. And we just are tired and we just want someone to like witness and understand and like hold space for what we're going through.
Hmm.
And here I am, 10 hours difference from the other side of the world, having Zoom calls with them. So I think that people are like, I'm saturating myself into like the birthing world and queer TTC in particular, like I'm consciously like pulling in resources and I'm very saturated in like a community of queer folks and like allies and other folks in the birthing world. But like
Mm-hmm.
that's because I'm doing it really consciously and intentionally as a coach. Like I wouldn't have no idea where to even start like when we were starting our process. And so
Mm-hmm.
like that's part of the work I'm doing now is like making real resources readily available for more folks as quickly as possible because there still is a big lack. And if you don't know where to go and you don't know the language, because as if you could probably attest to too, like you are all of a sudden in this completely foreign landscape, speaking a completely new language, and it's a lot to learn
Mm-hmm.
like along with the actual getting pregnant, along with like unpacking what this means for yourself as a person, there's like a lot of layers to it. It's not just like we want to get pregnant, go,
Mm-hmm.
and I think a lot of people do kind of try to muscle through it that way. But there's so much that happens in terms of like your own personal growth and like really needed to tend to your own energy and like taking down some of those big expectations and the amount of pressure we put on ourselves to get pregnant is immense.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that like finding a community that really feels like your people and is speaking your own language, just for simply to have someone to like bounce this energy off of and help absorb some of this bigger energy around what you're experiencing and just be able to vent, talk things out and talk about how shitty that fertility doctor was, or like, hey, do you want to have like a little party and like celebrate how cool we are? Like, we're going to be the raddest parents, whatever it is, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
But really understand like, what do you need? Like, what feels good to you? What kind of community do you want around you during this process? Because you have full agency to do that. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah. And I feel like there's also a separation inside of the fertility community too for queer people because, you often hear about when it's hetero couples going through IVF, it's the
Yeah.
nature of it is much different than, queer people going through IVF. So you feel a little bit selfish talking through the fertility journey, you know, not always having those infertile issues or infertile diagnoses,
Hmm.
and then other people speaking through their fertility journey and it being just solely based off of that and those struggles. So
Hmm.
I find myself also like navigating a like tiptoeing around a little bit because
Hmm.
I don't want to make anyone feel less inside of their own but like I don't also want to relate myself to someone else's when it's not really the same. So
Yeah.
it's definitely for sure like an interesting place to be.
I'd be curious though if you just asked that question or said that to an actual straight woman, cis woman who's,
Hmm.
I mean, sending them so much love, but actually infertile and using IVF, or their male partner is infertile in some way and they're
Hmm.
using IVF, and to say what they would say to you about that, because
Hmm.
it's not the same. But again, it's by default that we have to use artificial insemination or IUI or these other ways of getting
Hmm.
pregnant. It's that's and we're not infertile, but we still have to do that anyways to get pregnant.
Yeah.
So it's like interesting to hear like that. I've never heard like perspectives spoken like that, like what you just said.
Yeah. Well, I mean, because we still have to go through the steps, right? You still go through the impact of, specifically inside of IVF, like what the medicine does to you, the coming
Sure.
off of medicine, the cycles, the
Yeah.
planning, the shots, the all the
Yeah.
things. Um, yeah,
Sure. That's
it's
totally relatable for sure. But
yeah.
there's many more layers to it though when you're queer,
Yeah,
emotionally
and,
and
and
like in
the
terms of
multiple
your
rounds, like
expression.
needing,
Yeah.
we are obviously like very fortunate that we like Leah's transfer worked the first time, but it's also an interesting conversation because we both did transfers at the same time and mine didn't take the first time too. So it's
Hmm.
just like a weird place to
Yeah.
be when navigating any kind of conversation. But any conversation is good because it just brings awareness to the realities
Totally.
of people's worlds.
Yeah.
I'm curious, and obviously, I think it kind of the story tells itself of why getting involved into TCC or TTC coaching, and you know what made you take that step? Like, at what point was it, oh, this looks like something that I want to actually do? I want to help other people, and turn it almost into a career for yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. So I found that, you know, my daughter's only like 3 and some change. So in a lot of ways, I'm still a new, a young parent, new to the scene. But I think it's maybe partly also because of like my age. I'm 43 now, going through perimenopause and having a toddler and navigating I'm like in two worlds, right? I'm in like in this early motherhood and my sort of crone matriarch like perimenopause time, which I have one foot in each, which is like it's really interesting and crazy and powerful time. Like it's really
Hmm.
unique. And so I think that like it's giving me this other type of energy around like how actually profound it is to be a
Hmm.
parent. And I think that there's a lot of celebration and attention that gets put on really anyone who's gotten pregnant and then has their kiddo, what that means. But I think there's a huge opportunity that's being missed when tending to folks during the trying to conceive phase, because for most of us it's months and sometimes years worth of time. Like I said, there's a lot of repetitive grief there. There's a lot of things that happen, and there's a huge opportunity to actually like really tend to folks and support folks in the way they need and deserve, and infuse that time with a ton of like joy, celebration, delight, surprise, and honoring. And so I
Hmm.
think that like it just sort of happened where like I knew that I wanted to bring my skills into like a virtual space, and so that I could serve folks anywhere. It wasn't just locally in person. And I knew that I could bring my background with like that community building, delight, surprise, organizing, tending to folks with self-care tools with my own lived experience of what I've gone through and the insight that I have from trying to conceive myself. And so those two things kind of just converged and are converging even more to where in June I'm doing an in-person retreat for folks. It's not like an info like how to get pregnant. It's about like we're gonna fully honor your becoming phase of parenthood. Like we're gonna make this like the juiciest, sweetest, coolest, like funnest thing you've ever been to.
Wow.
It's to be deep self-care and like getting out of like your own like space, going somewhere new, having fresh perspectives, like just walking in and being like, oh my God, this was all made for me. And that's what I'm like, so excited. Like to me, I almost want to cry thinking how excited I am about
Yeah.
it.
What do you want to talk a
But
little bit more about it and explain what it
yeah,
is, like where it is?
y-
How, like, is this a
yeah.
first
So
time thing? Are you going to do it again?
I'm hoping to do it as a series, and I'd like to do it sort of regionally throughout the Pacific Northwest. But this one is going to happen in Edison. It's in Skagit Valley. It's just sort of south of where I live in Bellingham, and it's happening at the Edison Granary, just like this cool historic granary. And it's just going to be like 20 folks, 10 couples. We'll have like lunch, and it's just gonna be high touch, super customized, just like the big thing that I is runs through, whether it's my one-to-one coaching or my self-care tools or even the course that I've made for other birth workers to be more inclusive and do that work, and this retreat, all the thing that runs through all of that is this deep focus on the celebration, the honoring, the respect, the like deep awareness of how big a deal this is. You're
Hmm.
on this path. Like it's a massive, massive deal. And I think that people can either like muscle through it or sort of try to dissociate through it because it's so hard and just miss so much goodness that's happening. And so what I'm helping people do is like essentially build and stock their essentially like a metaphorical root cellar, right?
Hmm.
Of tools and like things they want to put in there that are maybe something they want to experiment with later, or just things that they can be bolstered by and like deeply seen with, and that they can walk into at any given moment and be like, oh my God, like, okay, I'm gonna take this off the shelf and this off the shelf and this off the shelf, which could mean one-to-one coaching with me. It could be my 2 week wait advent calendar that I've made to get through your 2 week wait. It could be like my love letters that you can write to yourself as a child or your future child, like all the self-care tools I have be things that you like your own, that you already have on deck that you use at home. But this retreat is going to be like that, but physically happening in terms of like you're going to walk away with this whole set of tools and sweet notes from each other, like sweet things that you could put like on the altar you're going to create when you get home, so you have something tangible to do when you're feeling totally out of control. You're going to
Hmm.
walk away with like this box of like all this great new nourishment in terms of like maybe some great salve that I've had a postpartum doula make for you, or like rad stickers that support you, or like affirmations you can put on your fridge when you get home. All things that are tools that are going to support you on the rest of your journey, as well as like you're going to leave with like a box of Swedish fish and then like a can of recess and some popcorn and a QR code to a dope playlist for your ride home. You know what I mean? And so it's just like from start
Yeah.
to finish, it's just gonna be really customized. I'll get a lot of information from folks like before they arrive so that I can really customize the space to like some of the fun things they already are thinking about, and like how can I just support like move them through that. Um, so yeah, I'm just like really excited. I'm just like really I just reserved the date today, so it's happening June 22nd.
I mean, congrats. I mean, that makes
Thanks.
me, it makes me feel really happy that there's something like that. And I'm sure that the success that comes from this will allow you to give that to other people.
Yeah,
I know that the lack of, I don't even want to say support, everything, the lack of literally everything in our journey was just so crushing. There was no
yeah.
excitement. Um, like behind, and my eyes are gonna start getting wet, but
It's
like there was
okay.
just there was just no excitement around anything for us. And so
Yeah,
even having that experience prior, right? Because when you start this journey, it's not like you start it and then you succeed within that next couple months. It's, it
yeah,
took us a year to get there, and you have so much excitement in the beginning and you have nowhere to put it because literally no one cares. Like, at
yeah,
least in the journey, like, unless you find those support groups, unless you find those people, but like, not one person was excited for us until, we've reached the point now. And it's like,
right.
we've been in this for a year. How has no one been there? Or, in any professional setting too, like, how has no one even thought like, oh, these people are experiencing something so beautiful for the first time.
Yeah.
Why are we giving them any type of question? Like, just ask a question. Like, that's all it really
Hmm.
takes. So,
Hmm.
I'm thankful for that, for those people that get to experience it, and even
Yeah,
create those, relationships within those other couples that are going to be there, right? Because that's
totally.
kind of what you need through it.
Yeah, and that's one of the things I'm going to do as a perk is that like everyone who's going, we're gonna have a Zoom call before, so we can have like
Hmm.
an opening ceremony and just like get everyone like meet each other in some way to get everyone kind of stoked to meet each other. But I wanted to speak to like what you just said around like the not feeling celebrated, and the thing is at the start, yeah, you're excited, but then you get like however many cycles in, you're burnt the fuck out, right? Like you're so burnt out and
Hmm.
you're so stressed and you're tired and you're like don't feel anything at some point.
You just get knocked
And
down so many times.
right. And that's the
Yeah.
thing is because you start with like all these big expectations that you can't even really not have because you don't know what it's going to feel like yet until you
Hmm.
get into it. Like it's really hard to like for people to really understand what it's going to feel like until they've done 3 or 4 cycles and then they're really in it and they're like, man, this is like way harder than I thought it was going to be. And that's the point. I didn't mean at any stage, but especially if that's the
Hmm.
point where you use that root cellar the most. And in terms of like asking for like support, like that was the one thing that I chatted to with a couple from Finland is that like they're like we're so burnt out, and I like my question was like what type of support do you have around you? Like do you have a crew? Do you have like a circle? Do you have your family? Whatever. And they're like, well, yes, but they're excited for us, but we don't know how to ask them for support. Like what can we even ask of them? Like what can we say we need from them? And
Hmm.
because we're not saying anything to them, they don't know how to ask us either. Like they don't know what we need because we're not telling them, and they don't want to be weird about can I ask, can I not? And I said, well, that makes sense. So like that's something obviously to think about. My first thing was like, can you take a cycle off? It was like in December, it's like the holiday. Can you take a cycle off? Whatever, have a cocktail, like go do something else, whatever, over the holidays. And
Hmm.
then tell your friends and family to throw you a party. That's what I would suggest you do. Have them throw you like a little sweet like dinner party or a little brunch or a little something. You can decide what you do and don't want to talk about. And but you need some obvious levity here. You need some bigger energy. You need a lift. You need some sweetness. You need some fun. You need like
Hmm.
whatever. And you can tell them exactly what you want them to do, or you can be like, this is what we want you to do, just do it for us, because I don't have the brain space to think about a party, but I want you to take care of us like this.
Mm-hmm.
And you know what I mean? Because that is a reality that you could have. And I think at that point, when you're 8 cycles in and you're burnt out and you don't know what to do next and you're over it, then the best thing you could do is like have a sweet little party and have your friends and family like bring them in if that's what you
Yeah.
want,
How do you have
and
a
have them
reset, right?
celebrate you. Yeah, have a reset and be celebrated and be seen. And then you have like this energy to like move forward to the next phase, into whatever the next thing is. You are energized now to deal with that, because you don't have to
Mm-hmm.
keep like just running up against the same kind of thing over and over again. You can prepare in advance for these things if you know what that's going to feel like. And so I said, after this next cycle, whenever you decide to resume, look at your calendar. What is that date when you're going to find out from the next cycle whether you're pregnant or not? And almost like like you're physically wrapping the day up in as much delight, surprise as you possibly can. So you're going to get flowers from the farmer's market. You're going to go for a day trip. You're going to have a coffee date. You're going to have a movie night. You're going to do whatever it is you want to do. But you know that on that day, that's going to happen. So you have that to look forward to. And then you'll know you're going to be okay no matter what that test says.
Mm-hmm.
Because otherwise, you're just like running up against that pregnancy test over and over and over again. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
It's all
But if you've
consuming.
already,
Yeah.
it's all you think about. It's all you think
Mm-hmm.
about. So if you can prepare in advance for these moments, then the ups and downs don't feel so steep. And part of what I'm helping folks do is like, if they know what their options are and they feel well resourced and they have the tools and support and they feel seen and celebrated, then the ups and downs are, that bell curve's not so steep, and they can cope with potentially being on this journey for months and years if
Mm-hmm.
they have the right amount of support and tools that are bolstering them. They have structure underneath them, and someone kind of as a witness, which is I'm doing this sort of a TTC doula, is like being their witness, walking alongside them and supporting them throughout that process. More people need that. More
Yeah.
people need that.
What a relief knowing that there is someone that's going to answer your question, or like at least hold the question for you, right?
Right.
Like whether
Yeah.
you know the answer or not right away, like what a relief it is to have someone that you can trust to go back to and be like, I'm in this part of this journey, like what does this
Yeah.
even mean? Because there's just so much unknown, right? Like you're just thrown to
Right.
the wolves so often without
Yeah.
having someone that, and not for nothing, like if you do ask the question to the person in the medical field, it's answered with whatever kind of answer that they want to give you that day, without
Right.
thought, without care, without being emotionally aware of why it's being sent. um
Hmm.
and like fresh, I can't even like, I've had people like tell me to calm down like when I'm like frustrated trying to get answers around like when I should be taking medicine, why is my medicine different, and like I'm just having
Yeah.
so many like PTSD, like just from
Yeah.
my own experience of things. So why didn't you
Yes.
reach out to me before we started? So
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
but
Totally.
I can understand the need, and not even for queer people, for people, for any person, just having someone as that support throughout their journey. I can just see the amount
Hmm.
of weight that can be lifted, like off of you.
I mean, yeah, that's something that from the start of that call to the end, like it was like like literally they both looked lighter just from having removed all of this from their body, to just like told it to me. And it was like they were kind of like laughing, we were like joking, they were just like both like, okay, they could take like a full breath because their like chest is not contracting, and they were like an
Hmm.
accordion. You know what I mean? And so yeah, just being able to
Yeah.
take that full breath, like, and really it's just like helping them have like a 1 degree shift and enough space in their body to breathe and have like a ripple effect of, but enough of a shift that they can feel sort of revived enough again. You know what I mean? To like
Yeah.
resume
Absolutely. I mean,
or
absolutely.
power down and rest. You know, because moving forward isn't always the answer. Sometimes powering down is the answer, and resting,
Yeah.
pausing, taking a break is more of the answer than going more. And so
Hmm.
that's a tool in itself. But like being able to recognize, and sometimes people like dole out a lot of permission slips is really kind of what comes down to, of like sometimes people just need to know they have permission to either do it their way, to take a break, to not like, because some people get so caught up in like not knowing what to do or wanting the pregnancy so badly they just do every single thing they're told. because they
Mm-hmm.
don't know they have agency to like ask questions or use the time because it's their time,
Yeah.
or ask about why you're taking medications, why this and why that. Like they just are like, I just need to get pregnant. I just need to tell me what to do and I'm going to do the thing. And then after
Yeah.
all of that, you could still not get pregnant. You know what I
Absolutely.
mean? And
Yeah.
that's a huge blow over and over and over again.
Yeah, I think it's the lack of expectations that are set too, right? Like, a lot of the
Which
time
is so hard.
there aren't like time figures put on things. So you're just told, oh, this is the next step, but it's like for them, they know the next step is going to take 3 to 6 months. For this side, it's like, oh, is this like 2 days from now? So like,
Right.
just setting expectations allows for you to just no, like you're not just waiting for an email, you're not just waiting for a phone call. Um,
Hmm.
so I mean, there's a lot of room for improvement in general. Um,
Yeah.
and going back a little bit, I was just thinking about this is when I asked about, how can medical professionals do a better job to be inclusive to queer people?
Hmm.
I think that there's a gray area, and I don't know the answer, but I do know that there is opportunity for there to be some type of growth and change. While we are both going into, not me and you, but like us and, a hetero couple are going into a fertility clinic for the same outcome of becoming parents.
Hmm.
Most of the time we're going in for different reasons, and which is okay, like that's the only choice that we have. But often if a straight couple's going in, there is some somber around it, like there is some like negative energy of just like disappointment. They've been trying at home for 2 years. They're going in, this is their last resort. But for us, we're going into this fertility clinic happy, right? This is the start of our journey.
Sure.
This is the beginning for us. We are excited. And so when you're met with someone that is expecting that the other side, you're not getting the same type of energy back from them. So I feel like there's opportunity for there to be some like notes
Hmm.
maybe on your profile, like that's like just starting journey, be excited for them or something.
Yeah.
That could
Yeah.
just completely change someone's experience.
Totally. And I'm thinking in terms of like your marketing, like if I have to roll through your Instagram or even your website and I see no evidence of you having worked with another queer couple before, and I don't mean like when you slap a pride flag somewhere on your website during Pride Month. I mean like, you know what I mean? Because the opposite end of that is just tokenizing us or whatever and being really shallow in your claims. But I mean like really genuine
Hmm.
allyship, like that goes a long ways. Like have you worked with other queer couples? What do your reviews say? Like, you know what I mean? Just like, are you a true ally or did you just slap the pride flag on your website
Hmm.
somewhere? And I think
Yeah.
that like that's a really easy and obvious way for folks who want to be allies to show that distinction. And I
Hmm.
think it's still like a weird lack of education, or somehow they're not putting the pieces together that like there's millions of us that are trying to become parents too. So
Yeah.
yeah, I'm not,
Yeah,
yeah.
absolutely.
Hmm.
When you reached out to me, you mentioned that there's just never been more important time than now to support queer families.
Yeah.
I'd love if you could just kind of expand on that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, primarily what I mean by that is like the total hellscape we're living in terms of our government right now, and the ways that, we already were under like scrutiny in society, and like the amount of like legislation and anti-LGBTQ bans that were being put in process over the last couple of years is immense. Like well over 500 different legislative bills. Um, and so I think already, again, like I said, there's that hypervigilance of us already feeling like queer people as a collective being told not to be seen, heard, or even exist, right? And so, and to some degree, folks are, experience like not just microaggression, but actual violence in their everyday life. So we're already, as a society, walking around with that. And I think that now with this new administration, who also would love to just wipe us off the face of the planet, it's, some folks are coming to me saying like, despite everything, we're still going to go for it. And some folks are coming to me saying like, oh my God, like, do I have to hurry up and like I feel like I have to expedite this process now in a
Hmm.
way that I wasn't prepared to. I wasn't planning on doing this like tomorrow. And some people are being like, there's no freaking way I'm bringing a kid into this world now. You know what I mean? So there's people all over the spectrum of that, those responses. But I think that like both in, I think primarily as it relates to like birth workers, the healthcare system, the role of fertility, really showing up and being obvious allies and being not just, using inclusive language, but really being a true ally, really being an advocate, really understanding the obstacles we face, not just trying to conceive, but in like in our everyday lives and the impacts of those things on our mental and physical health as it relates to trying to become parents, I think is needs to be happening, period. And I think that we shouldn't be still in 2025 with me telling my story to doulas or other birth workers and then saying like I had no idea you experienced that. I had no idea you went through that.
Hmm.
And so that's why I've created a course for birth workers to be a queer ally and use inclusive practices to like really bolster your doula practice, but also like really actually show up, like so that we trust you, right? So that we trust you as someone whose care we're going to be in at this monumental time in our life. And I just feel like we just need this network of folks that want to band together and be like a safety net and be the people that are bolstering us as a community in like this really real way. And so I think it's just time for people to like really step up. And if you're not sure, and if you feel like you want to be an ally, but you don't know how to, and you feel like you're going to say something weird or do something weird, or you don't know that you have the tools or don't know the language, I got a course for that. It's on 50% off right now. For the whole month of April, you can get yourself one right now. So I've created tools, and I think that like, yeah, I've used my lived experience and kind of branched it out over these different elements of things that I experienced that needed a lot of work, which was how we're being cared for in the birthing space, and then like self-care, and then like the one-to-one like consult and session. So I've spanned it out of those things because ultimately, if I can use my lived experience to teach doulas and birth workers how to be more inclusive and to be the kind of birth workers queer people are looking for, to
Hmm.
trust and be held by, then I'm going to do that. I'm going to use my lived experience and my background to set up people up for success, so that that's a
Hmm.
ripple effect too, so that that will be a ripple effect out over our community, and more people can have the families they want to have on their own terms, in their own way, and feel empowered and celebrated to do so. And so I think that like, yeah, that's why now is the best time. There's not ever been a more important time than right now,
Yeah.
because ultimately the
Okay.
more support people get in TTC and the more they get in while they're pregnant and having their kids, and in postpartum, but really in postpartum, that's gonna like raise really healthy parents and raise really healthy kids if we're supported. And in general, whether you're a cis het woman as society's like mother, pinnacle of mother, and if you're like the rest of us being parents and moms and dads and everyone in between, like if we were more supported, then the whole world would be 1,000 times more everything if parents really had what they needed to be successful in parenting. Um, and it's just like the lack of support in general that's like not there to support us.
Yeah, could you, call out some of those unique joys that queer parenthood brings that deserves more attention?
I think that just I think that that level of otherness or racer in terms of like, gender and our gender identities, or something that's like really important and really pivotal and really primal and front of mind for a lot of queer folks. Like their gender expression, who they are, is really important, is really how they like guide all of their thoughts and decisions and like walk through their everyday life. So when, for example, if you decided to hire a postpartum doula, and you're non-binary, and they kept referring to like breastfeeding instead of chest feeding, or they kept like asking weird questions of the non-bio parent, or they didn't have any idea where you could go for ongoing support and community beyond their 6 weeks with you, or
Hmm.
they didn't have any idea that the non-bio parent would have to go through after everything else, second parent adoption. Like there you are as a birthing professional just alienating them all over again
Hmm.
because you just didn't take the time to educate yourself on the types of things that they experienced before they got to you.
Hmm.
And I think that's crazy.
Yeah, I know that I don't in my For The Haters episodes I often don't talk about myself this much, but obviously this
It's
is
relative to where you're at. Yeah,
it's
obviously.
it's so relative, but it my sister told me when I was expressing my frustrations about the lack of emotional support throughout this entire journey, she had expressed maybe you should look for a doula like that, like
Hmm.
could fill in that nature. And my automatic concern was like, how do I find a queer, like someone that understands our unique needs? Like, I don't want to have to educate someone. I don't want to have to find someone that doesn't know, and we'll be educating them, and we'll be their, token gay couple that they get to
Exactly.
add to their list. So,
Yeah.
um, I like Google searched queer, and it was just so hard to find. Like, it was just very
Hmm.
hard to like navigate finding someone in that space. So just like you said, it's educate yourself to so our life doesn't have to be so hard and so daunting of just
Right.
tiptoeing around, making sure we don't get like hate crimed in every situation that
Yeah.
we go
And
into.
it's literal like emotional labor is
Yeah.
what we're going through for months and months and months leading up to actual like if you're the birthing person like actual labor of birthing your baby, but it's the emotional labor that we're being asked to be under like all of the time. And that's
Hmm.
why when people ask me like, well, why don't you just like work with all folks using, fertility treatment, including cis het women using fertility to get pregnant. And it's like for that very reason. It's like, sure, I guess I could do that because some of the stuff I've created like apply, but I
Hmm.
don't want, especially like an in-person, because initially I was going to do more like group programming. Initially, I don't want to put queer folks and straight folks in the same group. And then again, like all the queer parents are having to explain and unpack all the stuff for the straight ones in the group. I didn't want to do that,
Hmm.
just add more emotional labor to a group where they're supposed to be getting support. Like that's the primary reason I just don't feel like that's what I want to be doing. I want this to be something that's just ours, like just for queer folks, just to have our own space that's for us. We don't have to share it with everyone else. You know what I mean? So that's
Yeah,
for
for
that very reason,
sure. I
what
mean,
you're
it's
saying.
needed, right? As we
Hmm.
we kind of start to wrap up, what's one thing that you hope listeners take away from this conversation?
I hope that primarily, like if you especially are on your trying to conceive path at any stage, that you like just know that you're not alone. And it probably has felt like that because of everything we're saying in terms of like not finding the right support that you're needing or wanting. But hello, I would love to support you. And just, yeah, just know that you're not alone. And I see and I hear and I get like those like middle of the night Google scrolls where you're like, what is my body doing? What did this mean? What did this not mean? Am I pregnant? Am I not pregnant? I just feel something to that. Am I implantation bleeding? What is there anything? You know what I mean? All of
Hmm.
those things. I totally get that. Like I understand those little moments that are a part of this journey and yeah, you're not alone in that like at all. And
Yeah.
there is support and um there is support available to you and resources available to you. And so like don't hesitate to reach out. Like happy to help.
And where can people connect with you and learn more about
Uh
your work?
yeah, I'm mostly just like on Instagram, rocking Instagram pretty hard these days and Threads. I've been actually quite enjoying Threads lately. So those are the two primary places that you
What's
can
your
find me. Just
handle? I'll tag
DM.
it in in the description of this episode, but what is your handle
Yeah,
for
it's I am underscore Mamo MAMOMHK for Morgan Henry Kerr. Or I'm sure if you just search I am Mamo, you would find me.
Mhm.
But yeah, just DM me. I've got lots of stuff. We can do a discovery call, just chat about like where you're at, what you're needing, like see if we're a good fit. Um, Super no pressure, just kind of lays out like what I can offer you in terms of like what you're needing, whether it's now or in the future. And then we can go from there. I offer one-to-one coaching sessions. I have a 3-pack that still has a bit of a discount if you just want to have that for your root cellar. I have lots of like fun digital tools. And of course, my retreat coming up. If you're somewhere in like the Pacific Northwest and you want to come to that, totally come up. And then if you happen to be like, yeah, birth worker, doula, who's listening, who wants to like really step into your allyship right now and become the kind of doula we're all looking for, then like got that too, and it's 50% off right now. So got a little
Awesome.
bit of
And
everything
then
for everybody.
everything for everyone. I have one final question before we go.
Yeah.
If you could say anything to your younger self, what would it be?
Ooh, ooh, ooh. Oh my God, now my eyes are gonna start crying. Uh, sorry, Jesus.
My eyes aren't the only one that's allowed to get wet during an
Yeah, I'm
episode,
a
so
I'm a big time crier, dude. I like
yeah.
I'm a baby. I would think I would just say like, you didn't have to always be the grown up. Like I feel like I've been momming someone my entire life, including my own mom. And you know, that your voice did really matter. Like your truth does matter. Um, like what you have to say, you deserve to be heard. And yeah, you didn't have to be the grown up. You didn't have to be the one taking care of everyone else all the time. That you deserve to be taken care of too. And to be seen, like seeing her to
Yeah.
celebrating, like I'm still waiting for everyone else now.
Yeah.
But yeah, but like just to tell her that, yeah, you didn't have to pack everyone else's baggage around and be responsible for everybody, that your voice also mattered, even if it wasn't the loudest one in the room.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
I think that's perfect. And Morgan, thank you so much for sharing
Yeah.
your story and the incredible work that you're doing to support queer families. Your journey is a powerful reminder that the path to parenthood isn't always easy, but no one should have to through it feeling alone or unseen. To
Yeah.
anyone listening, if you are navigating the TTC journey, know that there is support, there is community, and you deserve to be celebrated every step of the way. Thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you next time on For the Haters. Thanks for listening to For the Haters. Don't forget to connect with us on socials, follow, like, and share to help more people find this community, and remember, they're not alone. And if you haven't yet, join our Facebook group. We'd love to have you there. The more we grow, the more lives we can impact.
For the haters, come on, do it now or later. Yeah. It don't matter what your name is, share your story.